When delivering criticism, it is important to do it with consideration and delicacy. If you punch someone in the face with criticism, they will become defensive and are unlikely to take that criticism on board.
The more equity you have in a relationship with somebody, the more direct you can be, I think, and they don't instantly get defensive.
I think there is a level where it's like you should get to the point where you can be direct and comfortable with being direct, but should always come at the expense of still having a gentle tone.
Yeah.
Like, hey, just wanted to make sure this task didn't get done. You can still be direct with like, why haven't this gotten done, without being like, yo, you're slacking, you're kind of being an idiot right now. Why are you not doing this? I think there's yeah. Oh my god, that's straight from the house. No kidding.
Welcome to our inaugural episode of the pod. Very excited to jump into this, jump back into it. We'll maybe do a little history in the past.
The episodes that we, times. All the episodes we have that we never.
We'll tease them out. Yeah. Cool. Well, we were just kind of talking offline here a little bit about what we're trying to do with this podcast, and the goal. I'm kind of taking lead on leading this off here. But the goal of our podcast here is to give a window into what it looks like real time building business. There's obviously influences on life outside of our businesses that we'll touch on in this podcast, but our goal is really to help the listener, for you to be educated either by our mistakes or successes, failures and wins, and then bring lessons learned that we're learning actively now, or that we're bringing and curating from other resources, like one that we'll touch on today. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do with this podcast, and what it looks like on this episode will probably morph as we go, but in general, our goal is to sort of document the journey and help bring some education as we're learning it. So
well said.
All right.
Very well said. So let's jump into it.
Cool. So should I read my section here first, or
read the section?
All right. So we got this is a section from an author that everyone knows here that I enjoy.
Let me guess.
Jocko Willinks. Leadership Strategy and Tactics. This is from his field manual. So this book, just a 30-second, 5-second maybe background. He wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. It's a great book applying lessons that he's learned into business and how to run your business. And this is the field manual that's meant to be a reference guide for implementing and applying those, leadership strategy and tactics that he outlined. So this one in particular is about tactfully delivering the truth. So I'll read the section, and then maybe I'll just open it up to get some thoughts from you guys on it.
Sweet.
All right, tactfully delivering the truth. When delivering criticism, it is important to do it with consideration and delicacy. If you punch someone in the face with criticism, they will become defensive and are unlikely to take that criticism on board. So a more indirect approach is needed. First, care about your people. If you truly care about them, they will know that, and they will accept your criticism more easily. Next, take ownership of the problem. Of course, extreme ownership, which, like I mentioned, was his original book, should be the fundamental principle utilized by any leader, and there are tactics of employing extreme ownership when trying to critique a subordinate. Utilizing extreme ownership while providing feedback might sound like this. Instead of saying, you failed to get the project done on time, use, what support or assets could I have given you so that we could have gotten that project done on time? Instead of saying something like, you failed to meet the mission objective, try using, I don't think I did a good job of explaining the mission objective. Do you fully understand it? Instead of saying, your lack of professionalism caused this client to go to our competitor, try saying, I think I have allowed things to slack around here in terms of our professionalism, and I think that's one of the reasons we lost that last client to one of our competitors. It's important to note that these are not simply techniques you are utilizing so your pesky subordinate falls into line. That's not the point. The point of all these statements, and the whole point of taking ownership, is that you truly believe what you are saying. And you should, because the ownership statements in those examples are not simply lip service, they're true. If a leader follows up with the team members and makes sure they have all the support and assets needed to complete the job on time, then it will be done on time. If a leader correctly explains the mission in a simple, clear, concise manner, and then ensures it is understood by the team, then the team will accomplish the mission. If a leader fails to emphasize the importance of professionalism, then it should come as no surprise that subordinates fail to act professionally. I'm often asked if there are any scenarios when the leader is not fully responsible for the performance of his or her team. The answer is no. If a team is not performing, then it is the leader's fault. The leader has not trained and mentored the team members to where they can accomplish the mission. If a team doesn't have time to train, then that leader has not made training a priority or run it up the chain of command to get the support needed. If members of the team are simply incapable of performing the duties required of them, then the leader hasn't done his or her job of removing the substandard performers. Ownership is real, and when utilized correctly, the concept of ownership will spread. So when a leader says, "What support or assets could I have given you so that you could have gotten the project done on time?" usually a subordinate will say something like, "Well, boss, I could have used another person on one section of the project, but the reality is if I would have done a better job planning and utilized my man hours more efficiently, we would have finalized on time. It won't happen again." Just like that, the problem is solved. But of course, there are situations when the subordinate in question does not respond properly to indirect criticism. In those cases, it's necessary to escalate the directness of the critique. It is still not a license to be overly harsh. Leaders should maintain tact even when providing more direct critique. Here are some examples of slightly more direct approaches that still don't attack the individual. Instead of saying, "What support or assets could I have given you so that you could have gotten the project done on time?" a more direct critique would be, "This is your project, and you are the one I trust to deliver it on time and in completion. What else do you need to do to ensure that that happens?" Instead of saying, "I don't think I did a good job of explaining the mission objective. Did you fully understand it?" a more direct critique might sound like, "You are the leader of this mission, and we didn't achieve the objective. Did you not understand what the objective was or the importance of it? If not, what can I do to ensure 100% that next time you do understand it?" Instead of saying, "I think I have allowed things to get slack around here in terms of our professionalism, and I think that's one of the reasons we lost that last client to one of our competitors," an escalation could look like, "I think I've allowed things to get too slack around here. As a leader, you need to hold the line as well. A lack of professionalism just won't cut it in this business." Last couple paragraphs. That more direct approach may very well solve the problem, but if it doesn't, and further escalation is necessary, a leader might have to explain that if the situation is not rectified, the subordinate will be written up. If that doesn't work, the leader will have to follow through and give a written counseling to the subordinate, documenting for the subordinate exactly what the problem is. What are the expectations? What corrective measures need to be taken, and the consequences of not meeting that expectation. Once this full escalation of counseling has taken place, there is not much left for a leader to do. If the individual continues to fail to meet the standards, it's their duty to remove the individual or put them into a better position that they're capable of. And that is the section, which I thought, yeah, well, why don't I just open it up? Because I just did a lot of talking.
In my experience, like, and just like, if you take it out of like just business, because even in the sense of like, we don't necessarily have like employees right now, but in just life in general, I think there's, in my experience, reasons to be direct, and it depends on the level of like comfortability with the person and kind of like the equity built in the relationship, and like and so like taking that concept into life in general, the more equity you have in a relationship with somebody, the more direct you can be, I think, and they don't instantly get defensive. So it's all about like I, for instance, how long someone's been in the company, how confident they are in their position, how often they've been successful compared to how much they've been struggling, and like really like taking time to like actually understand who you're talking to and the position they're in, because I think the context of their position in the company and how long they've been there and what they do and their responsibilities and all that stuff needs to be considered. Because some people can, especially with time and with more confidence, with more comfortability in their position, can take way more direct stuff where you're just like, "Hey, this has got to change," and they're like, "Yeah, it does," and then like move.
There is a tactful way to do that though. I know that I'm going back to like our personality is very different.
Yeah.
We had a couple times, like past like month or so, where like Mike is way more comfortable with, open confrontation and just like going for it.
Yeah.
Where it's something that I know I need to get better at, and I'm working on getting better at. But there's also a level where I feel like no matter what kind of level you're at with somebody, there should be a sensitivity to that.
Yeah.
It can't just be like, hey, like even with you, Mike, you're my brother. I wouldn't always just go straight at you.
Yeah.
Even though I've known you for 25 years, it's like, I think there's a point where it's like, yes, I agree that you should be direct, but it doesn't matter where. And this is kind of where you and I can kind of differ. I'm a lot more gentle with how I come at people with stuff, and like, and Mike is a lot more aggressive with it. And I know that in both ways, especially between Mike and I's relationship, since we're brothers, like I know he loves me in that, and sometimes I can't take it always as easy, but it's something that I have to work through personally. But I think that's something that Mike and I had, and I'm kind of like putting one of our conversations on like blast a little bit. It's like he came at me with something, and it's like, and then like I was like, hey, I wish you would have done a little more gentle, and he's like, well, I didn't really think that I should. Like I think so like we had to work through that whole thing. But I think there is a level where it's like you should get to the point where you can be direct and comfortable with being direct, but you should always come at the expense of still having a gentle tone to it. Yeah. Not like screaming, but like, like, hey, just wanted to make sure this task didn't get done. Right. What is something going on in your day that you're doing something that, like you can still be direct with like why haven't this gotten done without being like, yo, you're slacking, you're kind of being an idiot right now. Why you're not doing this? Yeah. So I think there's
shouldn't say that.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's straight from the house. No kidding. But like
word for word.
So like that's how I. As you're saying this, I agree with what Mike is saying, but I also feel like and I'm not saying that you're saying this, but I think I want to emphasize this. Like for me personally, I think there still has to be, you still have to have a level of gentleness in it, and try to understand, unless you tried to do that already. But I think like there should be a point where you should try to keep working with them, and there's a point where you need to be like, all right, we're done. Yeah. Then that's where you get to the point. Right. But I don't think that should your first action should be calling out the person. Yeah. That's just my thought. I don't know if that's what you're saying, Micah, if that's where you're going with it, but.
And I guess like when it comes to us, it's like, in my opinion, it's like we're at the same level. And so it's like, I'm not like talking to like, it's like if I was talking to a subordinate,
the context of this definitely
it would be different.
Changed it a little bit. Yeah.
Because like, I have the expectation that Christian wants to succeed just as much as I do. And so like with that thought, it's just like, hey, this is what I think we need to do to succeed. And so it's not necessarily like meant to be an attack. But
well, I think I think definitely as you're like leading a team, and as we look for when we get to the point of leading a team, it's like we're not really leading a team, but it's like trying to like, you don't want to. You probably know this. Like, you don't want to point out people's mistakes, but like, hey, we're as a team, this is what we're gonna do, and then have like the private conversation outside if you need to do that. But I think that's what we would kind of be looking.
Well, what's helpful, because I fall more in the camp on Micah, where I think I'm naturally aggressive. Yeah. Unfortunately.
It's not like. But I wouldn't say it's unfortunate though. I think that's great, and I think you need to learn. For me, it's like I've had to have a couple of hard conversations, and I've had to have even you, but like Micah and like a couple of the mentors, they'd be like, you need to have this conversation. Yeah. It's like, I know I need to have this conversation, but like I have a hard time with it. Right. But it's like, I know I need to have it. Yeah. So I'm okay with you guys saying that. It's like the same as like if someone's like super, super hard, but they're not gentle, it's like you need to have a conversation of like, you need to be gentle. Yeah. So I think both are like very important. Yeah. But if you're strong in one area, you're lacking in the other. Well, I think you gotta always try to balance back.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a particular guy that I work with that we all know that would say that I'm way too indirect. He actually says like you're indirect, like you are constantly not saying what you mean. And it's funny because we end up balancing each other out. So like between him and I'm actually more on your side, where I don't, and so that's where I think what really resonated with me and what I wanted to bring up that's kind of in both of these camps that you're talking about is the layers of escalation. And that's what you're getting at with the tact, where it's like, if if the first layer of escalation
Yeah.
is saying you did not do something right,
Yeah.
this is biblical. Take take the speck out of your own eye.
Yeah.
Right.
Take the log.
Right?
Yeah.
Take the log out of your own eye
Yeah,
before you
for
take
the speck, yeah.
Sorry, got to mix that.
We do go to church.
Sorry, fellowship. Just had lunch
Just
with
met
Pastor
Pastor
Rob. Jacking up.
What are we even?
Oh, all right. Take the log
see
out of
the-
your own
yeah.
eye. So like that's what this is saying. This is
Yeah.
take the log out of your own eye. So like the idea is what naturally should happen with in doing that and doing that publicly of saying this is how I could have done something better in this scenario.
Yeah.
Is naturally encouraging the other person to do the same.
Yeah.
This is what I could have done to do, which is ultimately where now as a building in relationship and building equity, you're solving the problem together. But then this has happened to me multiple times more recently where I did not take advantage of the levels of escalation, which is what, my colleague that is encouraging me to do more so, because like I tend to be like, I could just do this, or like I didn't do something that I genuinely believe like this is only not working because I didn't do something, and then that to him is like, oh, you're being too indirect. It's like, no, genuinely, I did not set them up for success. Like I don't have an SOP in place. I don't have clear guidance. I gave them guidance as if I were in their shoes and they're not me. Or they're not in my head, so like those sorts of things, communication wise, need to happen. And the layers of escalation at some point, it's like, okay, this is clear that all the layers of success that I need to do as a contributor to the relationship, subordinate or not, you're just a contributor in the relationship. All the things that I need, that I'm in control of and that I can do, I've tried to do to the best of my ability, and it's still not getting done. Then at some level, it's like you got to hold the line as well. Like,
Right.
Okay, is there anything else I can do here? Because I'm trying everything that I can do on my side to support what you're doing, but you're not doing what we need done, So that's kind of where I think he's getting at.
Right.
Which is a more selfless, like take the log out of your own eye approach to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like I always take it to like my go-to when it comes to like managing people instantly goes to like volleyball and like all the stuff with the volleyball club. And it's like whether I'm like over like talking to coaches about how they're walking out their coaching, or if I'm talking to the players themselves or the captains or whatever, like how I walk each of those conversations is very different. But even like in that situation, like with when it's like conversations with our family, when I'm talking to how we're gonna move forward with volleyball, it's been way more direct.
Yeah.
Compared to like if I'm talking to like a player or a coach, especially in like their early times, it's like how do you walk it out in a way that they're not gonna feel slammed?
Yeah.
Well, I think,
and there's been plenty of times I haven't done that well,
Yeah.
but like learning how to do it over time. But I definitely go to and like this is something for me to consider, but like go to how much equity is built in this relationship already that I can not like almost go too soft that they don't realize how much I
think
want
about
to
it
see
like
this
this.
change.
Say you had $20 in the relationship of equity with Christian.
is that a lot or a little for the?
Well,
effort?
so get
Okay,
this.
I was like, what's the scale?
I
right
was
now?
going to
Like,
say 20,000, but I was like,
are
let's
we
just go
from
with.
Let's say we have $1
120,
million.
like,
So let's say you have $20
Okay.
in your relation, the equity in your relationship, and you have some project that you're working on together, and it's not getting done. Are you going to spend $15 of the equity for this one project in communicating, or could you only spend $1 in communicating that? So that you're right in the sense that like the more equity you have, the more money you can spend, on that relationship and in that communication. However, there is an end to it, and you could, even if you have $20,000, you could go blow 20 grand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could still blow any amount of money. So it's you can think about it as how are you allocating your capital in the same way? Like are you overspending in this communication? And how do you mitigate the spend?
Well, even like when I brought stuff to you, it was more of like I had a lot to say, we don't have a ton of time. Like we're both doing all types of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, just there's a lot to say, just threw it out, and
Yeah.
that's where I like really was, and like I know Christian pretty well.
Yeah.
I knew that he would likely get offended, and then but then
Well, he did anyway.
but then
No, okay, hold on. Yeah.
then
Good job.
he would then consider
Lesson
what I
learned.
was saying,
Yeah.
walk through it, and like
Yeah.
I know he's humble enough, and like would be able to take that, and that's where it's like like
Yeah.
to where he would be like, you know what, I'm gonna put my pride to the side and take it. And that's like something I admire about him, because
I appreciate
I know that
Yeah.
he does that. And
Just don't spend all your money in one place.
Yes.
but like I knew that probably within like a little bit, and that's where I literally just sat silent. That's right.
Okay,
and
well,
Christian
wait
just
a-
processed through
But
it.
let's
And it was
do a
just-
different example, because I don't know if we want to get into
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
details.
But
No, it's fine though, because it is applicable, because we are
Yeah.
he and I are very opposites.
Okay.
Which I think is why we balance each other out well.
yes.
I have some thoughts to say, but I want you to finish what you're saying.
And in the end, like he brought some stuff even about how I walked out, bringing it to him. And so like that's stuff that like I've considered since, and I believe I've tried to adapt and change too.
I mean, we haven't had a
we
disagreement.
We haven't really had a
Yeah, but we haven't really seen each other though.
Brothers, roommates, and business partners.
Yeah.
It's a nice
Kinda,
combo.
it's a lot of fun though. It's a lot of fun.
Clean up your
I was-
freaking dishes.
Actually, we have to do that when we get away. No, I was gonna say too. I think it also. I like all that we're saying, but I think also takes a lot of situational intelligence.
Yeah.
If it's like a really if it's like a really low priority thing, like
Yes.
Mike forgot to grab the charger at my parents' house.
Yeah.
It's like he did that again. It's I'm not gonna blow up about that. It's like, yo, could you I'll be a little more direct and not be like, hey, so how's your day going?
Yeah. Right.
It's like yo, did you get my charger? You didn't
Right.
get. Why did you not get my charger?
Yeah.
Because you were supposed to remember it.
Yeah, you're supposed to remember to get the charger. But like I wouldn't get upset. But it's like I think there's there's levels of tact. Like he was saying about like coaches versus players. Like you don't want to crush the person. So like with a coach, you might not crush them if you go a little harder at
Right.
them. With a player, it's like maybe they're like, I want to get to volleyball.
With the
really
player,
bad. I
it's
wanna
like,
be
how
this
do I
or that.
beat around the bush enough to get you to understand but not
I
offend you
wish
that
my
then you
coaches
get
would've done
upset?
Yeah.
Well, it's
You know,
I mean,
you know
but
my
it also,
high school basketball coach was the #1 listener of my podcast. So
Yeah.
Hey,
if
maybe
you're
we'll get him
listening
here.
to this, he could have used a little more tact.
Dang. Coming at
No,
him.
he.
But
yeah,
even in
it's
that,
interesting.
you have
He
to
taught
know
me
your-
a lot of mental toughness. That was his goal.
Oh, that's
It's
good.
like, I'm gonna break you down and then be like, dude, you see what just happened?
Yeah.
You see how easy it was to just get in your head?
And I think it really comes down
And
to
imagine if I was a competitor to you now. It's like, all right, Z, you got it.
I think it definitely comes down to like situational awareness and like intelligence with that, because like I recently had a conversation with a player that I won't get into it, but like I just had to like be like a little more straightforward with him, like, hey, I heard that this is something that you're doing and you're injured, but you're doing this. It's like, are you injured?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what's going on?
Right.
So I think it's like, but we've had prior conversations beforehand of like, okay, so you're going to take time off because you're not going to do this because you're injured, you want to take some time. So it's like, I think in those kind of conversations, it's all about like building, like with Mike, it's like if Mike and I have had conversations, so maybe he felt a little more like I can be direct with him because we've had these conversations and we know where we're both at. We want to be at the same level. We're trying to pursue the same thing. So it's like, I think it all comes down to like, you're not going to go up to someone on the street and be like, you need to do this.
Right.
I mean, you don't even know
Yeah,
why are you yelling
situational
at me. Yeah.
awareness.
Yeah. So I think that, but like I always lead. I know personally, I always lead with like way gentler than Mike will lead gentle.
Yeah. I base it all off of like I think of Zeke, coaching Zeke, the level I could be direct with Zeke was so much more than anybody else. And so it's even like when it comes, like if we're talking players, how I talked to him compared to how I talked to other players on the team was very different because I knew the level of confidence Zeke had. I knew the level of like desire that he had to be good and all the areas he wanted to grow constantly. And like, so even like gauging each individual where even if they are like subordinate to you, if they have that passion, it's like, are you in a phase where you have a lot of confidence that you want somebody to push you? You're literally asking for someone to push you, or are you in a spot where you don't have a lot of confidence, where you're really struggling? You've had a lot of failures recently. And that applies into business, that applies to life, that applies into all the areas where it's like, is this your third loss in a row that you're just getting like, we're just getting beat down here, and it's mainly your fault. I can't like blast that person, but if somebody's got a different mindset and they're like always on it, and then they drop one time because they slacked off or whatever, you can be like, why did you drop your standards? You had all these standards that you've been holding to. You had all this confidence. You had these values that you were holding to, hard work, and then this last game you were just kind of shipping it. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And like, you can really be direct with someone like that compared to like the person that's like really struggling and always is struggling, and it's like, how are we gonna get you out of this, buddy?
Skill development.
Well, it's like it's learning how to like walk out how to help each person. It just takes time to like get to know people. Yeah, I think that's the biggest. And I don't know in a company like the one that Jocko's running, if like he doesn't necessarily know the subordinate that well, and that's where it's like, yeah, if you don't really know someone that well, you don't know what they're going through in their life. You don't know a lot of different aspects about what the context of their performance, because. Yeah. Like, if a quote that I want to say it's getting things done said was like, what the person is doing is exactly what they think is most important in that time. And so like what you're doing in the moment is what you think is the most important. So like if you're distracted and you're not focusing on what you need to accomplish, it's because you literally just don't think it's important enough. Like something else is more important to you. And so like that is, I can apply that to myself. I can apply that to other people where it's like, what is the most important to me in this current moment? Because like you're not making choices by mistake. You're making choices because you're choosing to do things. And so like if you're choosing to not perform, if I'm choosing to waste time and watch a movie instead of work on a business project, I'm making that choice because in that moment, watching a movie is more important than the business project. And that's something that I have to like recognize and be like, whoa, this is more important to me. And it's like relaxation and an enjoyment of entertainment is more important to me than finishing this business project. Yeah. And so that you can reflect that onto anybody. Call it out anyway. But like you can reflect that into anybody where it's like, well, what's the most important thing? And not everything's, it's not like you can say like that's bad or good. It's just that's what's important. Because like you spending time with your family is important, but that doesn't mean that like, it's all about where you've decided things to be like that are important, and like you going on a run is important to you, right? But like someone like me in the instance is like, well, why, you're gonna train every day and you're gonna run all the time. Like just imagine like you could like get more sales in that time, and it's like, but you don't like you're important. What you find important is different than. So like, that's it's just a way that when I read that I was like, okay, that's like really interesting to get into pretty much anybody's mind where it's like, oh, that's just what they find. Yeah. In this current back time to the relationship thing,
though, I think that is definitely a foundation where, without proper relationship. It's like it is the foundation for effective communication, and if there's not relationship that exists, feedback feels empty. Feedback is not informed, so it's not necessarily always well received or the right thing to be doing, without relationship or without understanding the situation, so I agree. I think there's definitely an element to building the equity. I think the biggest thing is to the same point of your decision-making comment is like spending the time to decide, to consider more factors that will influence your decision on what's most important. Like, is it most important to deliver the feedback this direct right off the bat? As opposed to just naturally doing that every time, taking a step back to look at it and make that a strategic decision. And that's why I don't think it's like to your point, it's not about just being a leader to a subordinate. It's a up, down, sideways, communication, for peers, subordinates, or leaders of, that you're under. So,
right. And that's where even like, if someone's even above you in a chain, if they're struggling and you're just like, what are you doing? Why do you suck at your job? Why are you failing all the time? You're making all of us fail. Like, even upwards communication, it matters for the person that's communicating upwards. It's like they
Well,
might
that's the
have
way-
less like power or whatever in the situation, but it's like you can wreck somebody that's above you as well. As
Well, that's
somebody below.
like a client, like a supplier, customer relationship. As suppliers to our customers, we have that type of dynamic where really they have authority because they're paying us some fee, for our services. So there is an authority dynamic there, and in providing critique to what they're doing, especially if you're consulting, that this is super important. That's why building a relationship, like in selling, they talk about rapport building first for this reason. So that way, when you challenge them on how they're doing something, so you can deliver them something that's going to change what they're doing, either product or service, and sell them that, you have a foundation and a relationship to communicate on, but I've found it to be very, very effective when to take an indirect approach, especially in that context with a client or in a selling scenario where it's less like, how often do you buy from somebody that comes up and says, you got to buy this, you need it?
Yeah.
Like that's a direct in your face. That might be true, but you're like, no, I don't. Like you're natural.
Right.
Like, I don't want
Defensive,
that. I don't want what you're selling. Like somebody knocking on your door at home. It's like, I don't want what you're selling. Like, it's very direct, as opposed to like, a friend starts talking about how much their life has benefited. Like, well, what caused that? Oh, this product. Oh, who got you that product? Oh, Micah did. Right. Oh, let me talk to him. That'd be the most indirect.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have, from your business knowledge and your business,
it's just so abundant.
Years,
Christian,
so
let me
abundant.
lay it on
years. No, do you have like a situation that you've applied a certain tactic that's either worked or not haven't worked?
100%.
Can you give us a story that won't violate any contracts?
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely. Most of them won't.
Yeah.
Pretty much all.
Like give up, because like Mike and I don't really have any outside of just like our own kind of conflicts.
Let's see. I think
we don't have a team of people at this point.
Here's a great one. The software business, due to some changes in the business at the end of last year, I ended up stepping into more of an operational role in the business where I had to take on, understand, and help lead the service board and the implementations of our software. So trying to make it a bit more tactical, example here. So the first step in that was diagnosing what's going on and understanding how people are doing things today. Naturally, an outsider coming in to this and the leader not having been a leader of this part of the organization in this manner ever before, I'm going to find probably hundreds of different things that we could do differently that would be beneficial. And there's a lot of different ways to solve the problems that I would find. Some of them I would come up with and think are the best. Some of them the team would come up with and they think are the best. Both could work. So like my job in that first step is to understand what's going on and provide feedback first, right? So like the feedback that I would provide first, to your point, is rapport building, relationship building. Like these people have never been managed in this way by me, so the first thing I'm going to do is start to compliment what's going on. It's good. Even if it's something super small, like, hey, that email you sent to the client was well written. It was great.
Yeah.
We're 6 months behind on this project. The client's going to give demand a refund. But you sent a good email. That was good. That's not the scenario. Yeah. But you get what I'm saying. Like there's could be very glaring, like you could be faced with glaring major business consequences if you don't fix something. But jumping to that is not the move. It's not the move to do. So like building the relationship is first. So to your point, I 100% agree with that. And in this context, that was my goal. Yeah. Next was looking at, well, what sort of information do they have to lean on to know what the standard is, to know how they should be doing something. And then as I'm investigating that, there's nothing. So it's like, how am I expecting there not to be problems if there's no standard and no information on how this should be done? Like, so whose fault is that as a leader of the company? Is it their fault? No. Like they're executing and the what they believe in the best, ways and handling the most important things in their mind. But I'm the only one with the knowledge of the full business, or this perspective, and I'm the only one that can say like, yeah, you have permission now to change how you're going to do your job, and put that control into their hands. So that was a huge thing. So what we did is we put like a 2-3 month project together to develop a standard operating procedure, and it was like, these are some of the things that I'm seeing. Like, are these the things that we should focus on? And then getting feedback, open-mindedness about that, nuancing what we should be focusing on, and then building the team's plan around how to fix that problem. It's like the biggest thing is like I could come in, document all the problems, fill out an SOP in an afternoon, get it to them and say, okay, go do this. The likelihood of them executing in the way that I've dreamed up in that afternoon is very, very slim compared to taking 2 months, and giving them some cover fire so that so that they can actually spend the time to develop the plan, develop a plan that they're like, yeah, this could work. Like, this could really solve all these problems. And then be like, okay, now execute it. Like, are they going to want to make that plan work? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
It might not be the best plan, but it's their plan and they want to make it work. You know what I mean? So its likelihood of it working is so much higher.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's specifically, we ended up with a 10-page document with, that's our service SOP. And the crazy result, so we had 180 tickets on our board.
And
that
how long does that usually take to get through those?
They've never been gotten through. So
Okay.
like the one putting our company on blast a little bit, but that some of these tickets had never been responded to for 6 months.
Yeah.
Which we need to be responding. The industry average is 2 hours. So. Big problem, right? I'm faced with a situation where we could start losing clients. So I've got to take the step of complimenting what they're doing instead of being like, what is going on? Like, we're going to lose clients.
You walk
they don't know that.
Like, it's already on fire. Like,
yeah, but then it's
shoot.
like, I haven't communicated what our SLA is. I haven't communicated what the industry standard is. I'm not measuring their performance. I'm not telling them what the standard is.
I just see like a picture is like literally you open up a door, there's like fire
that-
but like
yeah,
there's like
dog.
no, but I was
The
gonna
dog
say,
and coffee in
no,
the
but like,
room
but
on
like the
fire.
funny thing is it's kind of like you open up a door that's like it's everything's on fire. But like the carpet's not on fire, so you're like,
Good email.
Yeah, like nice carpet there. The walls are on fire, everything else is on fire, but it's a nice carpet.
Yep.
It's kind of like that
Just
vibe.
doing
Like,
the pour over coffee in the
Yes.
middle, just everything's on fire.
Well,
behind
what's
you.
crazy is they're
Anybody
staring at
want
the
coffee?
carpet, but they're not seeing the walls on fire, because
Yeah.
no one.
They don't have that.
yeah,
viewpoint.
and the outside.
They shouldn't.
When you're outside, you're like the whole house is burning right
Right.
now, and they're like, "Well,
Exactly.
I was looking at the car." Yeah, so it's
So
kind of
then
funny. The imagery is
yeah,
so funny.
and then calmly setting that, and it's also change management. Like they don't. If we have 180 tickets on the board, if I came in and said our standard is 55 tickets, they're gonna be like,
Yeah, how?
"What? Who are you? Like, what do you? Well, what are we at today? 55 tickets.
Yeah.
And they're like,
great.
everything has been responded to within 4 days. Like resolved within 4 days, responded to within 2 hours.
How quick-
across the board?
How quick was your when you implemented that SOP? How quickly did it turn around when
A
you had
week
that?
and a
Like,
half.
I was gonna say when you had like 2 months, you just spent.
Yeah, we went from 180 tickets to 70 tickets in a week.
That's great.
The lowest the company had ever had in the past 5 years was 90 tickets. We cut down. We beat that by 20 tickets in a week. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
But it goes to show you
In a week though, that was like about 2 months though, because you did all the back
Right,
work to get
exactly.
it to where
Yep.
you want it to be, and then when you actually
Yep.
implemented
and everyone's
it, it was
like, wait, this could really work. This
Yeah.
is achievable. We can actually do this.
Yeah.
With the timeline that you get like proper buy-in too, where it's like people actually find, and they also find their own place in it, where it's like, I can find my place in the solution instead of
Right.
me just dropping the solution.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah. And then the execution is key.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I'm not a technical person. So I can't go in and solve most, if any, of these tickets, that are sent in by our customers for the software company. I'm a steward and orchestrator of things, and helping them set the priority, helping them understand what's important and why is also a big thing. It's like they may believe this is important based off of the visibility they have on the business. If I can help educate what's going on in the business, that gives liberty to say, well, what do you think about making this as the most important thing?
Right.
Well, sometimes it's almost like pandering, like, well, duh, Steven. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, well, that's not what we're doing. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm glad it's so obvious now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. But so the one other thing that I'll say on that example is there was some situations where execution needed to be modeled as well, because no one's ever needed to be getting to the standard. So instead of saying like, just do it, like you got to go do this, I didn't want to spend all that leadership capital because I'd already spent a lot trying to build out this SOP and needed to have people prioritize something that they may have not felt was a priority in developing this SOP at that time. They felt good about the SOP, but then it's like, okay, now we got to execute on it, and that's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So going in and like I went into every single one of those 180 tickets, communicated with every single client about that in an afternoon. It was like, you guys you can do this. Like we can do, and I closed probably 20 tickets just by communicating. No technical effort at all. Just like, hey, is this still a problem? Hey, I'm so sorry this fell through the cracks. We can put this on our priority board. We're trying to figure that out. I noticed you have these other tickets. Like, would you like us to prioritize these or this? Yeah. Like, oh, just prioritize these. You can actually close that. Perfect. Closed. You know, so it's just like, now they're seeing, okay, wow, we just covered 20% of our board. He just covered that just by communicating. I can just hop into my tickets. Imagine what I can do actually being able to execute on something. You know what I mean? So like that's what started the snowball, you know, and got us to where we were going.
How much of it also is like helping them laser in on their tickets? Because it's like when you see like, what was it, 160 or 180, that number is like overwhelming for I don't know how many guys, people. It's like 3-4 people that are like, the tickets are maybe one person. I don't know. Yeah. But like, how much was also like their importance in showing, one, like how to take the action step, but then two, like how to kind of take the ownership of like, these are your tickets, and like, yeah, it might look like you have 55, but really if you work through them one at a time, half of them won't even need to be done really. No. Some of them will be quick fixes. Some of them might take some time, so just put those to the side. Try and nail out as many of these that need to take like 2 minutes or 5 minutes to complete, and it's just a couple messages or like passing it on to the next person so that they can then solve. And it's like kind of helping to break down the overwhelming number into like really almost like pocket-sized amounts.
Yeah. So this is the passage that relates that of what we read. If a team is not performing, then it's the leader's fault. The leader has not trained and mentored the team members to where they can accomplish the mission. If a team doesn't have time to train, then the leader has not made training a priority or run it up the chain of command to get the support needed. So even the fact that like, how do I get into the board and see what tickets should be my priority that are assigned to me? Like, start there. Like, like, does everyone know how to do that? Like, here's a training manual on how to do that. Here's how this tool is set up for you to do that. Yeah. Is it a challenge to get through all your tickets when you have an hour to devote? Okay, well, here's support that we have on our team. That's an administrative level support that's going to give you a roll up if your tickets go over a certain number. That's like obviously not worth your time trying to digest what should be your priority. You should just be able to jump into your ticket, pick the one that's a priority, and execute as like a tier 2, tier 3 resource. Yeah. So like that, those are the sorts of things that it's like, that's on me to provide the infrastructure and support and the training needed. That's not on the person to figure that out. So that's part of what this SOP was all about. And then also with like clients, if clients are much less indirect with their communication than like internally. Yeah. Some, are not taking this into consideration whatsoever. Very, very emotional. Mm-hmm. So like being able to take that and help as a leader and as the person that has the ability to either check the client, which I had to do in a few cases, like, hey, this is unacceptable. You can't communicate with our team in this way. Mm-hmm. If you want effective support, this is how you have to do it. Mm-hmm.
The standards.
Right. And now that team is like, wow, he's really in our corner here. he's willing to go to a client and jeopardize the business by saying
There's
like,
enough,
this is
enough
how we should
equity
do
in
it.
that relationship.
Yeah, right, which is great. But then after I say something like that and turning around and being like, this is what we've communicated to the client, you need to respond to them in this fashion. It'd be like, sure, no problem. You know what I mean? Like, you've now made it easier for me to interact with this client. If there's a standard in place to interact, like, I can meet that, so that this is a very practical way. And this was something that I referenced in thinking about how to handle that situation. Because, like, in all honesty, it was a very concerning time getting in and looking at the board for the first time. That's also on me. I should have been looking at the board. So like seeing that, understanding that, being like, wow, okay, I gotta implement this indirect approach. Otherwise, like, this could be the guy coming in, offending everybody who's not my brother. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's interesting. That's the example I had for you.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Well, even just like with the mindset of like going in to just break down like the unknowns and like kind of unveil what needs to actually be done. Like, and like you taking the time to do that brings clarity to the whole team because nobody's necessarily feeling like it's their job to go in and fix all of it.
Right.
But it's like, but the problems are there.
Yeah.
And so like you do need to like, and it makes a lot of sense that once you went in and saw the problem, you're like, oh, this is my responsibility. Let me start fixing this.
Yeah.
Gave confidence to everybody because you kind of like pulled back the curtain and it's like, hey, this isn't as scary as you all thought it was. I know we have 160 tickets.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out. And like leading the charge.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
I think that's exactly the way you want to do it.
Yeah, well, and it was also super important to have, like, we had a core team involved with developing the SOP, and they were responsible for pulling together all the information from the broader company and putting together the SOP. And then, like, my role is really just an orchestrator there and helping to make sure that there's accountability in place to make sure that that priority gets solved. Next up is implementation. That's our next step.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
All right. I think that was a good topic.
That's a solid one. I like that.
Yeah. I felt like pretty good about that. Hopefully that was helpful, for people to kind of glean some information. And I think that leaders do not need to have teams that they're managing. You can lead Christian as a peer, or if you were a W-2 employee or you had a client, you could lead your client even though they are in authority over you. You could lead your parents, at home. Like there's ways to, in this method, you're serving and taking ownership. Like, why couldn't you do that in all relationships?
Right.
Yeah.
And then if that's what leadership looks like, and now you've built the equity to make change, then do it, So,
yeah.
Any other final thoughts on that before we close out?
Well, even in that last point of like making change, I think it's definitely when you do like the small kind of like beat around it a little bit, try and help them see it. Change is so much slower and tougher to like really get moving. And that's where it's like, but if you have 2 months to like implement that change and you're not feeling like, oh, we have to change this tomorrow, then like you can get that changed. And like you're saying, like the equity is still there.
Yep.
All the relationships are still there. Yeah. The value of patience compared to like if something does truly need to be fixed, like having the equity to be able to fix it quickly.
Yep.
And it's like how like the question comes down to like how much change needs to happen now compared to how much can this wait?
Yeah.
How much patience can I have in this situation that it's going to be okay in 2 months, but it will get to the solution that it needs to get to. Yeah. Because you could have done like 4 months.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah, I mean,
might have not been practical, but like
practically that problem needed to be solved like the moment I found it.
Right.
So that was it. Definitely that was part of the calculus. It's like, okay, this is going to be tough. I'm going to need to exhibit a lot of patience and take a lot of risk.
Was there a deadline on that? Like a 2 month deadline, or was it just like, hey, when we get this done, we get it done?
Yep.
And it was just 2 months.
It's going to be done right. We're going to open this up and do it right.
That's good.
But we're going to move with purpose, and like this needs to be done yesterday. So like we need to move with purpose, Any final thoughts for you, Christian?
No.
No?
No, I like what you guys are saying.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for joining the inaugural episode of our pod. Tune in next time.
Yeah.
We'll have more learnings and both tactical and strategic things that we're learning real time. So thanks again.
Sweet.